Question: a freeway on-ramp is marked with this white sign. Which of the following vehicles used as lane? Option number 1, a convertible with an adult and 2 children. Option number 2, a carpool van containing only the driver. Option number 3, a sport utility vehicle containing an adult, child, and the family pet. The answer is option number 1, a convertible with an adult and 2 children. Question: if you are riding a vehicle equipped with the lap belt and also a separate shoulder belt, you are option number 1, only required to use lap belt. Option number 2, required to use both the lap and shoulder belts. Option number 3, only required to use the shoulder belt. The answer is option number 2, required to use both the lap and shoulder belts. Question: tailgating other drivers, driving too close to their rear bumper? Option number 1, can frustrate other drivers and make them angry. Option number 2, cannot result in a traffic citation. Option number 3, reduces collision by preventing you from being cut off. The answer is option number 1, can frustrate other drivers and make them angry. Question: when driving on a multilane street with two-way traffic? Option number 1, driving alongside the other vehicles so the drivers can see you. Option number 2, you should drive ahead of or behind the other vehicles. Option number 3, it is safest to drive in the lane next to the center lane. The answer is option number 2, you should drive ahead of or behind the other vehicles. Question: blocking an intersection during rush hour traffic is not permitted? Option number 1, unless you enter the intersection on a green light. Option number 2, under any circumstances, even if your light is green. Option number 3, unless you have the right of way or a green light. The answer is option number 2, under any circumstances, even if your light is green. Question: while all of the following is dangerous to do while driving, which is also illegal? Option number 1, listening to music through a set of dual headphones. Option number 2, adjusting your outside mirrors. Option number 3, reading a road map. The answer is option number 1, listening to music through a set of dual headphones. Question: when parking next to a curb, you should use your turn signals? Option number 1, only when pulling away from the curb. Option number 2, when pulling next to, but not away from, the curb. Option number 3, when pulling next to or away from the curb. The answer is option number 3, when pulling next to or away from the curb. Question: California's basic speed law says you must. Option number 1, keep your speed close to that of other traffic. Option number 2, never drive faster than is safe for the current condition. Option number 3, always drive at the posted speed limit. The answer is option number 2, never drive faster than is safe for the current condition. Question: driving under the influence of any medication which impairs your driving is permitted? Option number 1, under no circumstances. Option number 2, if you do not feel drowsy. Option number 3, if it is prescribed by a physician. The answer is option number 1, under no circumstances. Question: to see vehicles in your blind spot, you should check? Option number 1, the inside rear view mirror. Option number 2, the outside rear view mirror. Option number 3, over your shoulder. The answer is option number 3, over your shoulder. Question: backing your vehicle is? Option number 1, always dangerous to do. Option number 2, dangerous if you have a helper. Option number 3, only dangerous in large vehicles. The answer is option number 1, always dangerous to do. Question: If there is no crosswalk and you see a pedestrian crossing your lane, you should. Option number 1, make sure the pedestrian can see you before proceeding. Option number 2, cautiously drive around the pedestrian. Option number 3, stop and let the pedestrian finish crossing. The answer is option number 3, stop and let the pedestrian finish crossing. Question: this yellow sign means? Option number 1, controlled railroad crossing ahead. Option number 2, be prepared to stop if the light is flashing. Option number 3, there is a traffic signal ahead. The answer is option number 3, there is a traffic signal ahead. Question: you may reach an intersection with stop sign on all of 4 corners at the same time as the driver on your left. Who has the right of way? Option number 1, the driver on your left has the right of way. Option number 2, you have the right of way. Option number 3, whoever is signaling to make it turn is the right of way. The answer is option number 1, the driver on your left has the right of way. Question: this yellow sign means? Option number 1, the road ahead has many curves. Option number 2, there is a sharp curve in the road ahead. Option number 3, the road ahead may be slippery. The answer is option number 3, the road ahead may be slippery. Question: you are driving on a city street and see an emergency vehicle with flashing lights behind you. What should you do? Option number 1, drive to the right edge of the road and slow down. Option number 2, drive to the right edge of the road and stop. Option number 3, stay in your lane, slow down and let it pass. The answer is option number 2, drive to the right edge of the road and stop. Question: which of the following is true about roadways on bridges and overpasses in cold, wet weather? Option number 1, they tend to freeze before the rest of the road does. Option number 2, they do not freeze because they are made of concrete. Option number 3, they tend to freeze after the rest of the road does. The answer is option number 1, they tend to freeze before the rest of the road does. Question: a flashing red traffic light at an intersection means? Option number 1, slow down before entering. Option number 2, stop before entering. Option number 3, stop and wait for the green light. The answer is option number 2, stop before entering. Question: you are driving on a freeway behind a large truck. You should drive? Option number 1, closer behind the truck than for a passenger vehicle. Option number 2, farther behind the truck than for a passenger vehicle. Option number 3, to the right side of the truck and wait to pass. The answer is option number 2, farther behind the truck than for a passenger vehicle. Question: a solid yellow line next to a broken yellow line means that vehicles? Option number 1, in both directions may pass. Option number 2, next to the broken line may pass. Option number 3, next to the solid line may pass. The answer is option number 2, next to the broken line may pass. Question: you want to park uphill on a 2-way road and there is no curb. Which way do you turn your front wheels? Option number 1, so they face straight ahead. Option number 2, right towards the side of the road. Option number 3, left towards the center of the road. The answer is option number 2, right towards the side of the road. Question: drivers are required to obey instruction from full. Option number 1, security guards patrolling parking lots. Option number 2, other drivers whose vehicles are broken down on the roadway. Option number 3, flaggers, signal persons, and at construction sites. The answer is option number 3, flaggers, signal persons, and at construction sites. Question: you are involved in a minor collision at an intersection. There are no injuries and very little vehicle damage. You should? Option number 1, leave your vehicle in the traffic lane until law enforcement arrives. Option number 2, move your vehicle out of the traffic lane, if possible. Option number 3, not move your vehicle for any reason. The answer is option number 2, move your vehicle out of the traffic lane, if possible. Question: it is illegal for a person 21 years of age or older to drive with blood alcohol concentration, BAC, that is, dash, or higher. Option number 1, 0.08%, 0.08%. Option number 2, 0.10%, 0.1%. Option number 3, 0.05%, 0.05%. The answer is option number 1, 0.08%, 0.08%. Question: what is the benefit of a space cushion around your vehicle? Option number 1, other drivers can cut in front of you, improving traffic flow. Option number 2, if another driver makes a mistake, you have time to react. Option number 3, it initiates to protect you from injury in case of collisions. The answer is option number 2, if another driver makes a mistake, you have time to react. Question: to turn left from one-way street with multiple lanes onto a two-way street, start the time in? Option number 1, the far left lane. Option number 2, any lane available. Option number 3, the lane closest to the middle of the street. The answer is option number 1, the far left lane. Question: should you always drive slower than other traffic? Option number 1, no, you can block traffic when you drive too slowly. Option number 2, yes, it is a good defensive driving technique. Option number 3, yes, it is always safer than driving faster. The answer is option number 1, no, you can block traffic when you drive too slowly. Question: you may drive in a bike lane? Option number 1, if you drive slower than 15 miles per hour. Option number 2, no more than 200 feet before making a right turn. Option number 3, whenever bicyclists are not present. The answer is option number 2, no more than 200 feet before making a right turn. Question: a flashing yellow traffic signal at an intersection means? Option number 1, you should treat the signal like a stop sign. Option number 2, stop, yield to all cross traffic before crossing the intersection. Option number 3, slow down and be alert at the upcoming intersection. The answer is option number 3, slow down and be alert at the upcoming intersection. Question: smoking inside a vehicle when a person younger than 18 years of age is present is? Option number 1, legal, if it is your child. Option number 2, illegal at all times. Option number 3, not restricted by law. The answer is option number 2, illegal at all times.